Okay, so good afternoon, people.
Good
So now
afternoon,
we are
sir.
going to discuss Java, as I mentioned. Right? We want to look at Java from the basics. Then from there, we'll do some bit of practice today, because I believe that once we understand this first topic, which is very, very important, then it is very easy for you to get into the programming language very well without difficulties. Okay, so we want to begin with, first of all, define what Java is, right? So basically, Java is an object-oriented programming language. It came from C, that's the history of programming language. This is called Java. It came from C, then C was upgraded to C++, then C++ was upgraded to Java. So that's why you find that it is more similar. The syntax of C++ and Java is basically almost the same. But the difference lies in the emphasis of object-oriented. JavaScript is fully object-oriented, rather Java. If you compare to C++, it is more on functional-oriented. At the same time, it is also object-oriented. So it's partial, half functional, then half object-oriented. When we talk about function-oriented, we are talking about the use of functions separate from the data itself. But with full object-oriented, Java always starts with a class. Because with a class, you can produce so many objects. So that's why we need to understand what an object is. Then from there, we'll appreciate why we're saying Java is full object-oriented. So now, what is an object? An object is basically a software unit which packages methods and attributes together. So you find that with these old programming languages, which are not object-oriented, you separate the methods from the data. The programmer wants the methods separately from the methods from the data which the program will need to use. So you find that at the end of the program, you find that you be required to link the functions and the data. That's function-oriented. It was very difficult to develop. And at the same time, if the program fails to run very well, it was also giving problems. And also, every time that you're programming in this old fashion, you always program from scratch. Now, with the object-oriented, where there's an object and it does everything itself, it is self-sufficient, you will discover that you can even do what you call code reuse. You can use the same objects several times in different applications, which you'll see as you advance in Java, because you can write one class which can be called in other programs several times, as opposed to writing that program from scratch all the time. You can just have one class in one area, then you keep on calling it in all these other programs that you're going to create later on. That's what we call code reuse. That's the benefit of JavaScript, because it is full object oriented. So then what are the elements of Java for you to understand it better? So Java has these three major elements, which as a beginner, we need to understand and appreciate. Of which the first one is operators. You need to understand the Java operators that you're going to use. And also, number two, we need to understand the data types that will be used in this programming language. Not to forget the syntax. So we'll discuss these one by one, of course, with some examples for you to understand what these are. So we're going to begin with the operators. What is an operator? Basically, an operator can be defined as a system or user-defined method that performs a particular task, is what we call operator. And this includes things like arithmetic operators, comparators, logic operators, and Boolean operators. So now, what are arithmetic operators? We want to look at these step by step and how they are going to be affecting the programs as we discuss this language further. So now, arithmetic operators basically are mathematical operators, such as what? A plus symbol. So if you want to do addition, you'll be required to use this symbol, a plus symbol, right? If you want to do subtraction, you'll be required to use this dash symbol, we call it minus. If you want to use multiplication in your program, then you have to use this asterisk or a star. So most people, they use X to refer to multiplication, but it won't work. Instead, you have to use this star as multiplication. Then the forward slash, this one, refers to division. Want to divide something? Basically, just use the forward slash. Then one thing that you need to note, this equal sign is not used to compare that this is same as what. In Java, if you use this equal sign, it is assignment. It means you are assigning a value to a variable. Discuss what the variable later on as we discuss this. So now, for example, here, A is equal to 5. It means this 5 as a value is assigned to A. It is going into A for temporal storage. So if you want to compare that A is same as B, then you don't have to use this sign, because if you do that, it will mean that you are saying B is going to A. So now you must be very careful. That's where people make mistakes. If you are trying to compare that this letter is same as this letter, and then they use one equal sign like that, then they are saying basically to the compiler that I want you to put this value into this temporal storage. That's why you must remember, emphasize on this one, a single equal sign is same as what? Assignment. You are assigning a value to a variable. But don't worry about this. We will see later on how this works. But let's move on to what we are referring to as comparator. You know, basically, a comparator is comparison, basically. Comparison operator. We are trying to compare things. So we've got these comparator symbols, such as greater than symbol. This one means greater than. We've got this symbol here, which means less than. And then we're going to be using stuff like this, okay, greater than, and also the assignment sign. This means greater or equal. And then this one means less or equal. Now, coming to this, can you see now? We are using double equal signs to refer to equal to. So there's a difference between assigning a value. If you're assigning a value, you just use one equal sign. But if you're comparing to say this 50 is same as this 50 this side, then use double equal sign. So that's where the problem is. Many people fail to distinguish between a single equal sign and the double equal sign, because double means you're comparing A is same as B. But if you say A is equal to B, you're saying one of these elements are going into one of the elements that are defined. So that's where the problem is. But with this kind of arrangement, expect that you will master it also, because a single equal sign means assignment. Double equal sign is what we refer to as equal to. Hope that is not a problem. And then there is also this one here where you put exclamation mark and the equal sign. This means not equal to. Exclamation mark simply means not. So if you're saying A is not equal to B, you basically use this exclamation mark and the equal sign. So we'll appreciate these things later on as we practice. In the meantime, let's have these in mind as one of the basic elements we need to have to master. And then there's also logical operator. For logic, we'll be using symbols. For example, we want to combine certain things that A is equal to B, and also This is equal to what? For something to happen. There are times where I will say, for me to execute this, I need Peter and John. So there will be a combination of two things, two conditions. Peter must be true and John must be true. So the symbols that we use to combine such things are these double, okay, and symbols. So these double and symbols basically means and. So if I want to say x is equal to 10 and b is equal to 10, we'll be using these symbols to substitute and. So this means and, right? And then these straight lines here, I think you'll see them on the keyboard. Okay, there's a backslash on the keyboard there. So once you click on shift, you press shift, then on the backslash, you find that straight line on top. So these are the ones, use both of them, 1, 2. This means or, Peter or Tembo, right? Now those circumstances where we need to have these two applicable, right? Whereby you say, okay, for you to gain access into the system, we need to have this PIN or just use an account. So one of the two, if it's true, you can gain access. So to demonstrate the or, we use these symbols in Java. Okay, these two symbols here. And then the exclamation mark here, as I mentioned earlier on, it is basically used for not. Every time that you see this symbol, it means not. Okay? Then the Boolean operator, which I believe those who have done some electronics, I think they have looked at this topic at length. Boolean operator basically is just the topic that we normally use in computer architecture to mean, okay, off or on. So if you switch on the light, it is on. You switch it off, it is off. So now when you switch on the light, it means it is true. Alright? The cable indicates true, or the circuit indicates true rather. And then if you switch off the light, then the circuit indicates false. There's no power going in the what? The lines. So now that's what we actually also use. At times if I want to say, if this is true, then do the following. Otherwise, if it is false, don't do anything. So basically, these operators are going to be used to refer to what I've actually talked about as a scenario. A true or false arrangement is either true or false. There is no in between or anything else. It's either true or false. It's either you switch on or you switch off. There's nothing in between. So such operators, we call them Boolean operators, which just requires two things, either true or false. Either yes or no. We call them Boolean operators. Right? So basically, I've looked at the operators as one of the first elements of Java, which you need to master. But there's also what you call data type, if you remember. So the data type in Java, we refer to it as the data structure. The data structure which defines the name of a variable, or simply put, a temporal storage area. So a variable is a temporal storage area of a program, right? Now we've got two data types. We've got what you call primitive data type, and we've got what you call abstract data type. So now, what are the primitive data type? The primitive data type, basically, they are system defined. You don't have to define them yourself. They are already in the system. Just use them. For example, we've got integer, which you abbreviate in Java just int. Then you've got float, which you just simply indicate float, also in Java. Then you've got double. Double basically is a float which has a lot of numbers called double. Okay, and the string is the text, right? Just the text. And then also the single is Same as double, except that single means you've got few, okay, a smaller number as compared to what? To double. Okay. So now, when we talk about currency, as the name suggests, when you're working with the currency, for example, kwacha, dollars, or anything else, you will be using this data type because it's going to take care of those discrepancies of ways and cents and all that in terms of the what? The currency, right? And also, we have what you call abstract data type. In this case, the abstract data type, we are talking about those that we can define ourselves as users. And we're going to learn how to do that when you start practicing classes or basic structures in Java. In the meantime, we want to spend more time on it because we'll look at them later on. All right. So as we discuss this space topic today, of course, we're going to appreciate these primitive data types now. As we advance in this Java programming language, then also learn how we can define our own type so we can use them as storage areas in the system. Right? So now let's quickly move on to what we call syntax. What is syntax? Basically, syntax, these are the rules of the programming language. Every language has rules. Because normally language is just a way of communicating to a computer. So a programmer is a teacher. The difference is a programmer teaches a computer what to do. So a computer needs to follow certain rules for it to understand what you are trying to instruct it to do. So every programming language has its own rules, and we call them syntax. So as we discuss these rules, we're going to focus on Java, the rules of Java, which are very, very essential to our learning in this case. Because once you miss these rules, you find that you'll be doing things that you don't know. Why am I doing this? Why am I doing this? So you need to understand the rules before you actually dive deeper into this language. The first one is you always end the programming statement with a semicolon. So every programming statement in Java, once you end it, you write a statement and it's done. Don't just leave it the way it is hanging. To show that you have ended it, put a semicolon, like what we have put as an example. A is equal to 5. I've ended. I have to start the next statement. So to indicate that I've ended this statement, I have to put a semicolon. Otherwise, the program won't allow. And then the second rule is you always assign values to a variable from left to right. What does it mean? Look at this example. 5 is equal to A. 5 is a value, A is a variable. Now, this is very wrong. Why? Because a value should always be on the right, and a variable should always be on the left. Like in this case, A is a variable, right? That's why it is on the left. And then 5 is a value, that's why it is on the right. So this is correct because you always put a value on the right, then a variable on the left. Otherwise, if you swap in this way, it won't work. Right? Then rule number 3, you always declare the variable, right? A variable starting with the data type, then the variable name. What does it mean? If I want to declare a variable, declaration of a variable, it means we are saying this is what I'm going to be using in my program. So now, how would you declare to a computer that I'm going to be using X, Y, and Z? When you're declaring such variables, you must start with its type and then the variable name. For example, here, int, then put a variable name. So to be more specific, if my variable name is X, then I'll say int X, which means int is a type of this variable. So this variable x is of the type integer. Is of the type integer. So don't swap. Always put the type on the left, and then what follows later on is the variable name. Right. Then rule number 4, methods that are not in the development environment are always imported before the main program. So now if you want to use any of the methods, all right, like for example, you are doing mathematics, and then you want to make use of cosine or sine or anything that is not in the program, it means you need to import that function. For example, you want to use scanner, then it means you have to write import java.utility. Now this utility is the one that contains all the input methods of Java. Right? This is just an example. There are so many libraries that contains the methods you want. So now if they are not there, you import them. All right? Otherwise the program will indicate those red lines to indicate that, okay, I don't have what is written here. So if you're using NetBean will guide you to say, if you want to enjoy, right? If you want to enjoy this particular function, import this library to indicate. So that's why it is important to indicate, okay, the program before you start anything. All right? Now, number 5 is very important. Number 5 is extremely important. Why are we saying so? Because look at this one, saying you always follow the VIPO approach to develop a program from the given scenario. Now that's where people normally find it difficult, because if you're given a problem to say, can you write a program that can do ABCD? If you don't appreciate this VIPO approach, then life becomes very difficult. Right. So now what is VIPO? That's the next question. VIPO stands for V, okay, as variable, okay, then I, input, then P, process, then O stands for output. All right? So from the given scenario, you need to identify the variables, which are basically all nouns. Any noun in the scenario is a potential variable. And then the inputs are the receiving nouns. They're those nouns that, okay, will be receiving something from the given scenario. Those are inputs. And then the process from the scenario, look for the verbs, the doing words. All the doing words are processes. And then the output, basically for dispensing or displaying. So all those nouns that display something from the scenario, those are potential output. So right now what I'm going to do is, I'm going to look at these examples here. Then I'm going to see how we can develop them, okay, using the VIPO, and how eventually we can implement them using NetBean. So for example here, we are told, write the programs that will achieve the following. Okay, to add A plus B, answer goes to C. Or A times B, answer goes to C. Or A divide B, answer goes to C. And then A is equal to, open bracket, B minus U, then close bracket, divide T. So now, how do you apply VIPO to program? Let's look at the example 1. So from the example 1, A plus B is equal to C. What are the variables? Remember all the nouns, and that includes letters. So we have the variables from A, okay, from the question 1 here. We've got A is a variable, B is a variable, and C is a variable. So anything that you're going to use to add something in a program are variables. You need to declare them. And then what are the inputs? What will be receiving things from here? Of course, you'll be receiving things in A, and you receive things in B for you to complete the process. Not so. So A and B are the inputs, which are going to supply answers to, or figures to, or values to, in other words. Then what is the process? The process is what is going to work on. Okay? What you apply on A and B is a process. So for example, the process is to add A plus B and give the answer to C. That's a process. Is to add these two variables or these two inputs and give the answer to C. That's the process. And what will be given out after the program is done, you give out C. So C will be the final answer that will be given. So same applied, okay, to question 2. Okay, it's more similar to 1. Okay, as you can see, variables A, B, C, inputs A, B, but the process, now we are multiplying. Output is. And example 3, the variables are A, B, C, right? And then the inputs A and B. But the process, you're going to divide A and B, and what to be given out is C. Now 4, look at 4. We said 4 is A is equal to V minus U over T. So what are the variables here? Anything that the equation contains is there are variables. I want to use them, so you need to declare them. So these are variables. So A, B, U, T. All these are what? Variables. We need V, you're going to use U, you're going to use T, and A. Anything that you're going to use in the program, those are variables. But what will be receiving data? What will be receiving data? So of course, we're going to need to put value in V, something has to go in U, and something has to go in T for you to process all these. So that's why the input there are V, U, and T. Okay, so now what is the process? The process now is the whole equation. A is equal to V minus U divide T, then get all the answer and put it in A. What will be given out as the final answer? Of course, we need to see what will be in A after we do this process. Okay? So now, this is just how you get what you need. Okay, so this is what you need before you touch or open NetBeans and start programming. Right? You need to understand a given problem or scenario using VIP. What are my variables? What are my input? What are my process? Or what is a process? And what should be given out as output? Because if you don't understand this, you're going to write a wrong program. Right? So now look at how I'm going to interpret this as implementation. So the first one, remember what you start with? The variables. Okay? A, B, C. So I need to declare them first before I do anything. So I'll say int A, int B, and int C. Right. I'm going to use this variable scan for me to capture data. So that's why I'll put it there. So don't worry, I'm going to see how I'm going to import this in the NetBeans action. So this means I'm going to use scanner to capture data. Right? That's the purpose of the scanner. It's one of the libraries that you import. Remember, we said you have to import something if it's not there. So we are going to import it as we open NetBeans practice. So we're going to say system.out.print, enter A. Now I'm doing what? I'm doing the input now. Enter A. Right, since we said there are two inputs, right? Remember, there's A and B. So I'm going to enter A and B. So I'll say, right? So I'm going to say enter A, right here. Enter A. Then I'm going to say enter B. So it means the inputs here are sorted out. Here the variables were sorted out. So you start with variables on top. What follows are the inputs, like this. Then what follows is a process. So I need to change this one, it's a semicolon. Yeah, like that. Right? The semicolon like that. So C is equal to A plus B. I've done the process. Then what follows, people, is the output. System.out.print, the answer is C. So as you can see, the implementation follows the VIP. You don't swap. Right? If you swap, then you're going to have a very wrong program. It will be giving you wrong things okay, which we don't want. You find that it's working, but the answers are wrong. What's the problem? Logic. There's what we call logic error. It does not follow VIPO. What starts first? Sort out the variables. Sort out the inputs. Sort out the process. Sort out the output. That's how the program logic flows. You should not swap in. Right. So, for example, here, I'm going to share NetBeans. All right. I'll share NetBeans with you. All right. So